The first thing I remember is the bell, a sharp, piercing sound that sliced through the silence of the room. My eyes snapped open. I was lying on a cold, hard floor, not in my own bed. The room was stark white, seamless, with no doors or windows in sight. Just a single desk, a chair, and me. My name is Jace, and I had no idea how I got here. A voice, smooth and disembodied, echoed from the walls. Welcome, student. Attendance is mandatory. Failure is not an option. A shiver ran down my spine. This wasn't just a school. It was a prison. Days blurred into a monotonous routine. The bell dictated everything. When to wake, when to learn, when to sleep. The lessons were bizarre, covering everything from quantum physics to ancient philosophy, all delivered by the same disembodied voice. There were other students, I soon discovered. We'd see each other in the vast, sterile hallways that seemed to shift and change on their own. We never spoke. Fear was a tangible thing, a heavy cloak we all wore. We learned quickly that failure had consequences. One day, a student named Alara couldn't solve a complex equation. The floor simply opened beneath her, and she was gone. The school had eliminated her. Panic started to set in. This place wasn't just testing our knowledge, it was testing our will to survive. I had to find a way out. I started observing, looking for patterns, for glitches in the system. The walls, the floors, the very air seemed to hum with a strange energy. I realized the school was alive, a massive, thinking organism. It watched our every move, learned from our mistakes, and adapted. It was a game of chess, and I was just a pawn. But pawns can become powerful if they reach the other side of the board. My strategy shifted. Instead of just trying to survive, I started to test the school back. During a logic puzzle, I gave an intentionally absurd answer. The room flickered, and for a moment, the white walls dissolved into a chaotic swirl of numbers and symbols. I had found a weakness. The school thrived on order and predictability. Chaos was its enemy. I began to introduce small acts of defiance. I'd hum during silent study. I'd rearrange my desk. Anything to break the rigid structure. Each time, the system would stutter, its control momentarily faltering. The other students noticed. They started to look at me not with fear, but with a glimmer of hope. I found an ally in a quiet student named Ren. He was a brilliant observer, noticing things I had missed. Together, we started mapping the school's reactions, documenting its patterns. We discovered that the bells weren't just signals. They were pulses of control, reinforcing the school's authority over us. If we could disrupt the bells, we could disrupt the entire system. It was a risky plan. The school had already shown what it does to those who fail, but staying here, living under this oppressive control, was a slower kind of death. The day of our rebellion arrived. During a history lesson, instead of answering the question about a famous battle, I stood on my desk and started singing a nursery rhyme. It was the most chaotic thing I could think of. The disembodied voice faltered, "Student Jace, cease this disruption immediately." But then, Ren joined in, then another student and another. Soon, the entire hall was filled with our defiant voices. The school fought back. The lights flickered. Violently, the walls groaned and the floor trembled. It was trying to regain control, to silence us. But our collective chaos was too much for it to handle. Suddenly, everything stopped. The singing, the shaking, the humming energy. A single door materialized in the wall of the main hall. It was the first door any of us had ever seen here. The voice spoke again, but this time, it sounded different, less authoritative, almost curious. Final test, Student Jace. You have demonstrated the ability to disrupt the system. Now, show me how you would run it. The control panel is yours. In front of me, a console rose from the floor, covered in glowing dials and buttons. One large, red button was labeled bells. This was it, the ultimate test. My friends looked at me, their faces a mix of hope and fear. I could dismantle the system completely. I could turn off the bells forever and free us all. I could seize control, just as the school had done. I looked at the button, my finger hovering over it. I thought about the fear, the control, the students we had lost. Power was a tempting thing. I could become the new master of this place, ensure no one ever suffered again. But would I be any different? Or would I just be replacing one form of control with another? I looked at Ren, at the faces of the other students. They weren't looking for a new leader. They were looking for freedom, not just from the school, but from control itself. I took a deep breath. My hand moved from the main power button to a smaller dial. It was labeled Attendance Protocol. I turned it from mandatory to optional. I didn't shut down the bells. I didn't seize power. I gave it back. I chose to trust them, to give them a choice. The voice spoke one last time, a whisper that seemed to hold a hint of something new. Respect. Choice implies trust. Control implies fear. You have failed to graduate, but you have passed the test of humanity. The door in front of us swung open, revealing not a sterile hallway, but a bright, sunlit field. Freedom. We walked out, not as survivors of a prison, but as graduates of a different kind of lesson. We learned that true strength isn't about control. It's about having the courage to let go. And as we stepped into the real world, we left the school behind, silent and waiting for its next lesson.